Stop whatever you're doing right now. I don't care if you're in a meeting, mute it. I don't care if you're cooking, turn off the stove. I don't care if you're on a date, tell them you'll call back. This matters more than whatever you think is important right now. And if you own any silver at all, coins, bars, ETFs, mining stocks, futures, do not look at the price until you finish this video. Because what I'm about to explain is going to completely change how you understand the silver market. You need the full picture before you make any decision. Are we clear? Good. Something happened today that I never expected to see in my lifetime. Something that quietly shattered the trust between the U.S. government and its citizens. Something that proves, mathematically and officially, that the silver shortage isn't coming someday. It's already here. And it's far worse than most people realize. Earlier today, the United States Mint released a public statement. I'm going to paraphrase it clearly so there's no confusion. Effective immediately, the U.S. Mint has suspended sales of American Silver Eagle coins, both bullion and proof versions, due to extreme demand and supply constraints. There is no date for when sales will resume. Let me translate that into plain English. The U.S. government just admitted it cannot provide silver coins to its own citizens. Think about that. The most powerful government on Earth, connected to miners, refiners, wholesalers, and global supply chains, cannot get enough silver to mint coins. That should stop you in your tracks. The U.S. Mint has been producing silver eagles for nearly 4 decades, through recessions, through financial crises, through wars, through pandemics. They've had delays before, they've had allocation limits before, but they have never fully stopped selling. Until now. This is not a delay. This is not a backlog. This is a hard stop, and there's only one reason for it. They don't have the metal. Let's talk numbers, because numbers don't lie. Last year, the U.S. Mint produced roughly 16.7 million silver eagles in total. Sounds like a lot until you see what happened this month. In just the first 2 weeks of January, orders came in for over 8 million coins. Let that sink in. Half of last year's production gone in about 15 days. At that pace, demand for January alone would exceed the entire annual output from last year. And January is just the beginning. Demand isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. Why? Because people are waking up. They're realizing the price quoted on a screen isn't real. They're realizing physical silver is disappearing. So they rush to the only source they believe they could trust, the government. Except the government doesn't have the silver. According to internal data, the Mint currently has enough blanks to produce just over 2 million coins. Meanwhile, outstanding orders exceed 11 million. That's more than 5 buyers for every 1 coin that can be made. That's not a backlog. That's a mathematical impossibility. And even if they magically found more blanks tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. The Mint can only produce about 40,000 coins per day at maximum capacity. Even running non-stop, they'd need several months just to catch up, while demand keeps growing. So they did the only thing they could do. They stopped. Now here's where this becomes explosive. Just before the Mint halted sales, something else happened. Silver prices in Asia surged. The Shanghai premium blew out. The physical price in the East separated completely from the paper price in the West. 2 markets, 2 realities. Paper silver in the West, physical silver in the East, and that gap is getting wider. The U.S. Mint was the last safety valve in America. When dealers ran dry, when premiums spiked, Americans could still buy government-minted coins at reasonable prices. That was the unspoken deal. Today, that deal was broken. The government raised the white flag. And the moment that happened, the private market exploded. Within hours, major bullion dealers were either sold out completely or charging premiums that would have sounded insane just months ago. Not $5 over spot, not 10, 50. Sometimes more. And even at those prices, inventory vanished. That tells you something critical. If silver is selling out at those levels, then that price isn't high enough. The true clearing price, the point where supply actually meets demand, is higher. How much higher? We don't know yet, because there's no supply left to test it. But one thing is absolutely clear. The real price of silver is not what you see on a futures screen. Now, let's address the question everyone asks. If silver is so expensive physically, why doesn't someone just buy its spot and make more coins? 3 reasons. First, refiners and blank suppliers are tapped out. Lead times have stretched from days to weeks. Raw silver is getting harder to source. Second, only the U.S. Mint can legally produce silver eagles. No private company can step in. And third, even generic silver isn't cheap anymore. Wholesale markets are already trading far above the so-called spot price. The arbitrage is gone. The system is broken. This is where the banks come in. Major financial institutions have massive short positions in silver, positions built on the assumption that physical supply would always be available. That assumption just collapsed. If the U.S. government can't source silver, what makes you think the banks can? Covering those short positions would require tens of millions of ounces that simply don't exist in accessible form. And if they tried to buy that much metal, the price wouldn't rise gradually. It would explode. This is why they're trapped. You can suppress an expensive asset. You cannot suppress an unavailable one. That narrative shift is irreversible. And silver isn't alone. Gold is making new highs. Bond yields are spiking. Investors are dumping government debt. Stocks are volatile. This isn't random. It's a global vote of no confidence in paper promises. And silver, because of its industrial importance and chronic underinvestment, is right at the center of this storm. Look at India. Silver prices there have surged far beyond Western quotes, not because people don't know the paper price, but because they know it's meaningless. Physical metal is what matters. And when silver becomes scarce, cultures that understand currency collapse act fast. They don't wait. They don't debate. They buy. That's happening across Asia and the Middle East right now. The West is the last one asleep. So, what does this mean for you? If you already own physical silver, do not sell it. Not coins, not bars, not rounds. You're holding the asset everyone else is scrambling for. If you own paper silver, ETFs, futures, contracts, you need to seriously think about counterparty risk, because when delivery fails, paper settles in cash, and cash won't buy metal in a shortage. If you don't own silver yet, the window is closing fast. Availability is shrinking, premiums are rising, and once supply is gone, price becomes irrelevant. The form doesn't matter, the ounces do. This is not financial advice. This is reality. A government just admitted it cannot supply silver. The physical market is breaking away from paper, and the repricing hasn't even begun yet. You now have a choice. Believe the screen or believe the shortage, because one of them is lying, and history tells us exactly which one it is. The silver shortage is no longer a theory. It's official. The mint is out, the system is stressed, and the physical market is disappearing. Decide which side you're on before the decision is made for you.
This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not speculation. This is arithmetic. Cold, unforgiving arithmetic. And the numbers point to one unavoidable conclusion. J.P. Morgan's silver position is mathematically unstable. According to analyst reconstructions using publicly available data, including OCC derivatives reports, CFTC commitments of traders data, COMEX warehouse statistics, and decades of delivery tracking, J.P. Morgan's estimated net silver short exposure is approximately 4.2 billion ounces. Let's put that number into context. Global silver mines produce roughly 800 million ounces per year. Divide 4.2 billion by 800 million. That equals 5.25 years of total global mine supply. J.P. Morgan is effectively short more than 5 years of worldwide silver production. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. The amount of silver currently registered and available for delivery on the COMEX is approximately 123 million ounces. That means JP Morgan's estimated short exposure is 34 times larger than the entire deliverable supply of silver. This is not a tight market. This is not a stress test. This is a structural failure. When the math doesn't balance, something must give. Either the short position collapses or the price explodes. There is no third option. Before going further, let me be absolutely clear about what this analysis is and is not. This is not insider information. This is not a leaked document. This is not a prediction. Everything here is based on public data, historical precedent, and scenario modeling. The estimates may be imperfect. The timeline may vary. The assumptions could be partially wrong. But even if the short exposure were half as large, 2 billion ounces instead of 4.2, the conclusion does not change. The imbalance is too extreme. So why would a bank like JP Morgan accumulate such a massive short position? Not because of a single bet, but because of decades of routine activity. JP Morgan is a precious metals market maker. They facilitate trades for miners, refiners, industrial users, and investors. When clients want to buy silver, JP Morgan sells. When clients want to sell, JP Morgan buys. In theory, these positions are hedged. In reality, perfect hedging at global scale is impossible. Over time, net exposure accumulates. Add to that, forward hedging for mining companies, industrial client price hedges, OTC derivatives and options, risk management positioning. None of this is illegal, none of it is malicious, but over 20 to 30 years the position compounds. And now, with silver at record highs, that legacy exposure is deeply underwater. Let's talk about losses. Assume, conservatively, that JP Morgan's average silver entry price is $60 per ounce. Silver is now trading near $90. That's a $30 loss per ounce. Multiply that by 4.2 billion ounces. That equals approximately $128 billion in mark-to-market losses. JP Morgan's Tier 1 capital is roughly $250 billion. That means silver alone represents about half of their capital base in unrealized losses. Accounting rules can delay recognition. They cannot erase reality. If silver continues higher to $100, $120, or $150, those losses quickly exceed what regulators will tolerate. At that point, de-risking becomes mandatory, and de-risking means one thing: buying silver. This is where the trap closes. Covering a short position requires purchasing the underlying asset, but the asset does not exist in sufficient quantity. You cannot cover billions of ounces in a market where deliverable supply is measured in the hundreds of millions. If forced buying begins, price does not rise smoothly, it goes vertical. There are 3 potential triggers that could force this covering process. Crisis 1, COMEX delivery stress. If an unusually high percentage of futures holders stand for delivery, registered inventory becomes insufficient. At that point, the exchange faces a choice: cash settlement or emergency sourcing at any price. Either outcome destroys confidence in paper silver. Physical premiums explode, and shorts are forced into the physical market, where supply is scarce. Crisis 2, regulatory capital pressure. If silver rises far enough, regulators may require JP Morgan to either raise tens of billions of dollars in fresh capital or reduce exposure immediately. Raising capital under those conditions is nearly impossible. Reducing exposure means buying silver into a rising market. Crisis 3, global supply competition. Asia, particularly China, has shown growing demand for physical silver. Export restrictions and regional premiums indicate that metal is being accumulated, not released. That creates direct competition for limited supply. J.P. Morgan would not be the only large buyer, but it would be the only buyer under time pressure. And time pressure is what makes prices explode. If forced covering occurs in a compressed window, weeks instead of years, the price response is not linear, it is exponential. Historical precedent supports this. In 1980, the Hunt brothers accumulated roughly 2/3 of annual global silver supply. Silver rose over 800% in a year. J.P. Morgan's estimated exposure is many times larger relative to supply. No one is claiming silver goes to absurd levels, but even a fraction of that historical impact produces prices far above today's levels. Scenario modeling suggests that $300 silver is not extreme under forced covering conditions. It is mathematically plausible. This is why the distinction between paper silver and physical silver matters. Paper is a promise. Physical is reality. When delivery is certain, they trade together. When delivery is questioned, they diverge. The discount on paper is counterparty risk, and in a shortage, reality always wins. So what does this mean for you? If you hold physical silver, you hold something that large institutions may desperately need. If you hold paper exposure, understand the risk of cash settlement. If you hold nothing, understand that availability, not price, becomes the limiting factor in a true squeeze. This is not about hype, it's about imbalance. 4.2 billion ounces demanded, 123 million ounces available. That equation does not resolve gently. When it resolves, it does so violently. And when it does, prices are not negotiated, they are discovered.